Welcome to another edition of the ACA Global Market Encounter with Jim Fitzpatrick. Before we begin the session, I would like to acknowledge our partners and our sponsors. I'm talking about SNI, CNFA Pro Cashew, GIZ Move, and many others. Please note that the session is being held in English with a simultaneous French interpretation. To access this service, kindly click on the globe icon on your screen. Select your preferred language, mute the original sound. Without wasting much time, I would like to invite Jim to take over for the session. Thank you. Good morning, Jim.
Good morning, Blessing. How are you?
I'm well, thank you, Jim. Hope you too.
I'm great. Welcome, everyone. Coming to you today from the BFAC Organic Trade Fair in Germany. First time we've ever done, I call it an outside broadcast on the GME. Today we're going to talk about, as usual, a little bit about the markets, although frankly there's not a lot going on. I'll tell you a little bit about what's going on here at BFAC on organic cashews. And then fittingly we'll talk about organic cashews and perhaps the opportunity in Africa for organic certified cashew nuts. We're going to be joined a little bit later by Salma Sitaro of the Cashew Coast in Cote d'Ivoire. I'm actually sitting at their stand at the moment. And we'll also be joined by Cara Hillenbrand of SAP, who has been working on digitalization of traceability. Frankly, a really interesting subject. So we'll start, have a quick look at what's been happening here at BFAC. As you can see on the screen, there are a lot of nut companies here. Cashews have become a really important subject in the organic segment. As you can see, there are traders, importers, one or two processors, ingredients manufacturers. And I think this is one of the key things. So I thought I'd show you some of the products that are developing. We've seen a whole range of new products in this area of vegan foods, and cashews are really central to this. We're seeing, as you would expect, cashew butter and cashew cheese. We're also seeing these very interesting cashew biscuits and snacks based on cashew kernel paste, and a really interesting model for home or sports club or small retail outlet manufacture your own cashew paste based on a club type model. You rent the machine, and every month you receive 15 kilos of various tree nuts, including cashews, to make your own cashew nut butter at home. Great for sports, great for athletes, great for kids. Protein, nutrition, these factors really playing big here at BioFac. And amongst those new products, I think there are 8 cashew products, all in the ingredients area, in the innovative section of BioFac 2022. It is a really refreshing and interesting development. As you can hear, it's really busy here today. There's people coming and going. It's quite an exciting time. Some of the key messages emerging at BioFac this year, I think the most significant message right now is that the story behind the products is becoming really important element of how this trade fair and how this industry is playing out. So I asked someone yesterday about the food technologist, what do you think is the new thing? What is the new factor about cashew nuts that we can bring to the market? And he said, really, it's the story behind the products. This means key aspects: building supply chains, traceability and transparency. Looking at cashew kernels as a more versatile ingredient, we're looking at the protein content, we're looking at the fat type, we're looking at the mix with other products. If we look at the situation now, we are looking at a certain amount of uncertainty. We're looking at not so much the impact of economic problems, we were looking at the uncertainty created by the rising inflation that's causing some hesitancy amongst buyers. I think what we will see, according to discussions we've been having here over the last day or so, is that probably by September we get a better idea where the demand curve is going in terms of the impact of inflation and the impact of the war. If we look generally at the picture, one thing seems certain is that we will see higher food prices ahead. That goes for all the commodities, it also goes for all of the ingredients. So we're in a really interesting time in that respect. I don't think that we should judge the market as many are doing simply on the basis that inflation is bad for demand. That is not necessarily the case. It's absolutely not the case that a product like cashew nuts will see a fall in demand. We've got to go back to the last big recession in Europe back in 2008 to see how that actually played out. Let's have a look at the market. We have a look at the farm gate. Basically, crops are over. The later crops were pretty good crops, maybe not quite as big as expected, maybe a little bit slower in Guinea-Bissau than was originally hoped for, and maybe a little bit less in Senegal too. I think in general, we've seen that the crops in the later part of the season have been not as good as in the early part of the season. Looking forward now, and this is the time of year when we start to do that, we see the first estimates from Brazil. Again, not a particularly healthy estimate, I think around 120,000 tons. That would be a continuation of the disappointing trend, and it certainly looks as if that's not going to reverse. From Tanzania, an excellent crop forecast. There is still some time to go. Reports are that the inputs have reached the farmers, and therefore we're probably looking at a pretty good crop. International market in RCN is really quiet. Prices obviously have eased on lower quality, but we are seeing quite slow trade at the moment. Looking at kernels, we've got this situation again emerging on kernels where again we see cash flow issues in Vietnam, cash strap processors in a situation where they have basically used that basic marketing tool, let's drop the price. Of course, it doesn't work, so you keep having to drop the price. And I think right now for prompt shipments, the marketing strategy in Vietnam is off the rails. Dropping prices is actually moving buyers away for prompt, although there still seems to be quite a bit of buying interest for forward positions. Looking at the downstream markets, we still see most people in India predicting a good festival season. This is getting going now. Festivals, we're looking at September, but really October. That demand is predicted to be good. We're not as yet seeing an impact on the markets of currency because that will tend to kick in next year. So probably in 2023 in Europe, we will see the impact of the dollar euro at or almost at parity. If you're in West Africa, if you're linked to the euro currency-wise, there's a real opportunity there to sell in euro, so a fixed exchange rate. And it is, I think, just another of the opportunities for West African cashew processors that's emerged as a result of this crisis. So we're looking at transit times, we're looking at freight advantage, and now we're looking at an opportunity to sell in Europe too. Overall, there's no doubt that the underlying demand, particularly the demand we're seeing here at BioFlag, is really strong. Demand for brokens is strong, demand for wholes is strong in the organic segment. In conventional, I think it's fair to say that demand for brokens is strong. But right now, what's underlying demand is strong at the consumer level. We haven't really seen any negative impact yet. Buyers would prefer to wait until they are working in maybe a more certain environment, or perhaps that they're working in a situation where they have clarity on the current economic situation. We think on cashews, as I was saying, that we're going to get a lot more indications in terms of demand by the time we get to September, October time. And just again, as we showed 2 weeks ago, looking at the impact of the euro and then the compensatory factors of the freight and transit times, we're again looking at a situation where definitely prices are much higher for European buyers, but perhaps not by as much compared to last year or 2020 as you might expect. Taking everything into account, we're looking at about an 8% rise in costs, which probably is not enough of itself to do significant damage to demand. We won't know the answer to this until people start buying for next year, which will happen in the last quarter of this year. So there is right now discussion between suppliers and retailers. The suppliers need a price increase. Retailers, well, what else is new? Retailers don't want to offer a price increase, and that discussion continues. Some news stories for you during the week. In the quiet market, a couple of stories caught my eye. I think it's interesting that long-term studies on cashew demand are still very positive. Looking at rising demand 2022 onwards, that's a recent market study released in the US. Interesting story from Cambodia, and maybe there's some learning here for African cashew sectors. Cambodia reporting very good interest in nuts for tourists in Siem Reap. I think there may be opportunities there in the future for some African countries. Euromonitor reporting, again, going back to this factor that I mentioned earlier, that consumers are so much more interested in the story about their food. Euromonitor confirmed this. Euromonitor is a much respected market analyst in the food sector. And they're again talking about how consumers are interested in the story behind their food. So that means, where does it come from? It means, I suppose in a way you could technically translate that into traceability. Who grows it? Who manufactures it? What happens to it? What's in it? These factors all play into the development of origin process. So really essential ingredients for the development of the African cashew sector, and some of these reports are really quite encouraging. Less encouraging, I suppose, is the impact of climate change in India. And although I don't think that there's in any way we can say that there's a big impact on the Cashew Crop 2023 by any means, but it is interesting to note the impact of the climate change factors on the monsoon this year, and it has caused real havoc in certain parts of India. Also in India, and maybe this is a key factor, especially if you're in the RCN business, the rupee now it went out to 80 to the dollar. This is a big factor. It makes imports more expensive. It could potentially have an impact on raw cashew nuts. It may certainly affect the timing of raw cashew nut purchases, if not the actual purchases themselves, but certainly a factor to be watched. And of course, the newspapers, Financial Times in this case, making a lot of discussions about will there be a recession, when will it be, how deep will it be. And there are as many opinions on that as there are newspapers and TV news channels at the moment. But it is certainly something that is weighing heavily on kernels buyers' minds, and they will be looking at this and watching very closely to see the next developments market-wise. Overall, not too much to talk about over the last 2 weeks in the market. RCN prices, I would say steady, but naturally prices where quality is lower have slipped a little bit. I think farm gate prices towards the end of the crops in the western part of Africa have probably slipped back a bit. Kernels market prices, if you want to buy prompt in Vietnam from a smaller packer, you can buy a really incredibly low price at the moment, and not so much the same if you want to buy top quality product for forward shipments. some indication that buyers will continue to buy those dips in price. And not too many buyers active at the moment, particularly Western buyers, Europeans, Americans. It's July, early August, a lot of holidays. You don't see a lot of buying activity. You never do at this time of year. Look at the currency. There is potential for a rebound still, I think, on kernels. I don't think that these low prices will be with us for much longer. I think we will probably see some new COVID outbreaks in Europe. I don't think that they will result in the kind of lockdowns we had in 2020 and 21 by any means. The experts are telling us that won't happen. So it's unlikely to have a direct impact on demand, but it could well have an impact on logistics, shipments, and costs. This must be watched. Probably second half of this year, certainly in Vietnam, possibly in India, we'll have reduced volumes processed. We're looking at a lot of disruption. We're looking at cost factors, and we're looking at availability of raw material. But more than anything, we're looking at cash flow and the impact on cash flow of a couple of very difficult years for processors, especially in Vietnam. This means that a lot of those opportunities that we've talked about in recent months are still there. If you're an African processor, if you can sell in euro, if you can prepare cargo and ship it in maybe a 3-week transit time, particularly to the European market, a lot of opportunity in that. So effectively, not a lot has changed over the past 2 weeks. So let's get on to our main subject of today. What I want to try and give you is an overview of the organic cashew sector. We've been intending to do this for some time, but it's fitting that we do that when we're here at BFA in Nuremberg, in Germany. So we talk a little bit about organic cashews. And first of all, we'll ask the question, what is organic production? It's important for us to recognize that it is a method of production that avoids the use of chemicals, but has regulated standards, controls, certification. There's no organic unless it's certified organic, and which has its own very careful legislated for labeling scheme. So this is complex. Sometimes it's easier to understand something by saying what it's not. And if we look at that organic food, and particularly organic cashews, we can say, first of all, it's not just simply testing for the presence or absence of pesticides. Even if nuts are chemical-free, residue-free, it does not mean that they can be sold as organic cashews. Secondly, it is not this phrase we often hear, organic by default. Organic by default is not organic. It cannot be sold as organic food. It's not certified, and it's not suitable for organic marketing. And that's really important that we understand that, so that we can ensure that organic certified cashews from Africa are genuinely organic certified cashews from Africa, with the emphasis on certified. That means that this product range, this certification is not suitable for opportunistic trading. It's not easy. This needs certification, needs the building of organic supply chains, it means organization of farmers, it means segregation of the product, as well as all those other factors to ensure that there's no chemicals present. So this is not the answer for everyone, but it may be the answer for some. There's a price premium, and the price premium, of course, is the root of some of the difficulties of the organic sector. So when we look at price, we should ask, why is the price of organic cashews? Why is there a premium? And what is that? When we do some research around the market, we find that the premium on cashew kernels is ranging between 20 and 30%. Generally speaking, it's fixing around 25%, and it is managing to maintain that, at least from African producers. It should at least partially be passed on to the farmers. That is the concept. It exists originally because generally in organic production, the yields are lower. So asking farmers to transfer from conventional, where they might be using chemical fertilizer and pesticides, would reduce their yields. But maybe that is not the case on cashew nuts in African countries, simply because many of those farmers are not using chemicals in the first place. We're actually looking at a situation where we have a supply chain that's not using chemicals or not using them widely, and that creates conditions where organic cashews may well be a solution. It also involves better and detailed record keeping, the use of natural fertilizers, and chemical-free pest control. And these can be quite challenging. I've seen solutions in Vietnam and Cambodia where ants were used to control pests. I've seen solutions where natural compost was made on the farm. We've seen training on that. Very interesting. It does definitely create conditions where you can improve yields in the organic production areas. The premium is based on lower yields. If you can solve that problem, it can be a great opportunity for the grower and, of course, for the processor that's linked to the grower. But there is a cost, and the cost is certification. And this can be annually or every 2 years. It's absolutely essential to renew the certificates. The processing plant must be certified, but so must the supply chain, the farmers that produce. And so you'll often see a model where organic production is based on certain villages or based on certain farm groups. So if we look at the price situation in the market, and if we look at the premiums, looking at 320s, we're seeing a situation where the general wholesale price of 320s on a survey we did last year for one of the organic companies showed that 320s were trading around about 26% premium. If we took that on and we looked again in the European market, in the wholesale sector, we saw premiums slightly higher, around about 32%. So this was a survey done across a range of importers, distributors, and eventually retailers. So we are seeing that this is maintained. These premiums are there regardless of the origin of the product, regardless of the grade. The research we did was for 320s and large weight pieces, and this is what we came up with. It's fairly confident that these premium prices are being maintained across the sector. Demand is strong. Demand has been growing quickly. So when we look at organic foods, we see the demand rooted in healthy lifestyle and natural food. And if you walk around Biofak here, you can see this so strong, and particularly in relation to edible nuts and dried fruit. The healthy lifestyle, natural food is everywhere. Secondly, people talk about conscience-driven consumption, and in organic there is a particular concern for the environment. And of course now with the realization for many people that climate change is a real threat, and it is in the foreseeable future, concern for the environment has grown, and we see a situation where far more people are looking at the products, looking at the environmental impact of the products that they buy, including cashew nuts, of course. The fact that organic involves verified, independent food claims with their labeling system, with the record keeping system, with the developed supply chain is a really important factor for many consumers, and this is attracting them into the market. And of course, finally, and this applies equally to the conventional and to the organic, the interest in the story behind the food is getting greater and greater, and organic plays so well into this trend. And the good news, I think, as we've seen when we look at the premiums, is simply that consumers are prepared to pay for these factors. So we're looking at a market that is evolving, a market that's evolving quickly and positively. And generally speaking, the consumer understands the need to pay a higher price. Let's have a look at consumers of organic cashews around the world. Generally speaking, if you look at these countries, the greener they are in the picture, the more likely they are to consume organic cashews. So you can see in Europe, large markets like Germany and the UK are important. Sweden is also an important market, but it's a small market. If we look elsewhere around Europe, generally speaking, more organic cashews consumed in Western Europe than in Eastern Europe. If we look in North America, the US consumption of organic cashews has been rising quickly, and we also see rising consumption in the Far East. Quick look at the US market. We're estimating it's about somewhere between 11 and 14,000 tons. There is no separate tariff heading for organic foods, so all of this has to be based on estimates. It's an evolving estimate, and it is a fast-growing market. This is where we see it right now, 11 to 14,000 tons out of a total market size of 180,000 tons. Remains quite small, but still quite interesting. We saw relatively slow growth in the snack food side in 2020, but last year, organic snacks, organic cashews showed really strong growth. Predictions are that we will see 16% growth for the period up to 2025. That is significant. Let's remind ourselves from a pretty small base. Overall, you can see on the left-hand side, the blue chart is the growth in organic food consumption by value in the United States. And you can see that over the last 7 years, there has been very strong growth trends. If we look in Europe, organic cashews, the market is probably somewhere in the region of 6,000 to 8,000 tons of kernels. As I've said, big markets, UK, Germany, perhaps Italy, on the verge of becoming a big market for organic. Important, but smaller markets, Scandinavia, Switzerland is also an interesting market. Then, perhaps surprising to some people, is that research is showing us that the growth in India in organic foods, presumably including cashew nuts, is forecast to be around about 20% per annum for the period 2021 to 2026. This is really interesting, particularly given that India is already a large consumer of cashew kernels, as you know. Secondly, also really interesting, is that organic food in China is a factor. Chinese buyers of nuts are very motivated by health factors. They are fast falling in love with nuts, imported nuts in particular, and the growth in the organic sector in China is forecast at around about 5% per annum for the next 10 years. So in terms of market share, 10 years from now, you would expect that in China, the share will be about the same as it is in the United States today. And that has to be built into the context of growing consumption of cashew nuts and all tree nuts generally in China. So I think what we're seeing here is beginnings of a fast growth cycle for organic foods generally to continue, but also for organic cashew nuts. So there is an opportunity in that. If we try and look at suppliers, and this, I got to admit, this is not an exact science because again, we don't have any way to track, comprehensively track, statistically track organic food. So we're basing this on trade estimates, chatting to processors, chatting to buyers. So if you look on the map on the screen, you'll see the orange countries are the countries which are more present in the organic sector. And the darker the orange, the more important they are. If we look in Asia, in Vietnam and Cambodia, what we're seeing, there are of course some major suppliers, and there are some packing centers packing organic cashews. There are some questions on some of them. There are arguments coming in from Cambodia, for example, which are certified, but locally certified, not certified by internationally accredited bodies. And there would be question marks over that certification. That's not to say all suppliers are in that situation. Of course, there are some good suppliers, but there are some discussions and question marks arising. If we look in India, we see, I think it's fair to describe as high quality exporters of organic foods. You see some of the names listed, and they're producing relatively small volumes of high quality product that is properly certified and does have correct links to farms in most cases. But really, the driver of growth at the moment is in West Africa. So we're seeing in Cote d'Ivoire, Olam, of course, is a major processor of organic cashews, and my hosts today, Cashew Coast, also running their organic cashew factory as a way in Cote d'Ivoire. Elsewhere in Benin, Tularo, Organic Benin, in Burkina Faso, we have Anitrans, Debana, and smaller factory Waka. We have New Cashew in Ghana, and there are one or two small factories operational in Guinea-Bissau and elsewhere. So we are seeing availability, we are seeing increasing interest, but of course, as I said earlier, this is not easy. This is something that takes significant time and significant investment, and it's not something to be taken on lightly. If we look in South America, Brazilian volumes, and Brazil is where organic cashews started, of course, but the volumes have come down just as the crop in Brazil has come down. There are still one or two suppliers, of course, that are doing a pretty good job, and mostly selling their pieces in Europe and the United States, and the wholes generally going to the US market. So what we're seeing is, if we contrast the two, we contrast the picture on consumption, we're seeing strong growth from relatively low levels, but on the supply side, we're seeing quite narrow supply, and we're seeing relatively slow growth. That's natural, given the resources and the time necessary to establish an organic supply chain. So let's look at this market growth and try and identify the constraints to growth in organic cashews. And there is, without doubt, perception among buyers that the supply is limited. I think we can verify that is true, but also that it is to a certain extent erratic. Small factories, small processors, small volumes. Quite difficult to assemble a supply chain if you want to develop a new product in organic. We're seeing here at BioFac very strong interest, particularly in broken cashews for organic applications, but there is also interest in whole grades, mainly 320s, and those seem to be holding their price and seem to be holding their premium, even when the conventional market is quite flat. Still some challenges. At times, the quality of organic cashews is perceived, and I think probably unfairly, given on some of the products we've seen here this week, as unreliable. There are definitely high quality organic cashews around. And there is some, in certain markets, there is likely to be some consumer price resistance, and particularly price sensitive markets or price sensitive market segments. So perhaps in snack foods, perhaps with older consumers, perhaps in certain markets, maybe the Netherlands and the US, there might be some price resistance. Now, how that will be addressed is probably by adjustment in retail pricing, unlikely to be adjustment in premiums, unlikely to be an adjustment in certainly won't be an adjustment in certification or systems. So it does look as if the supply will continue to be limited in the short to medium term. So the question we wanted to pose really is, can organic production work? And when I say can it work, I mean can it work in African countries? Can it be part of the solution, part of the opportunity? And when we look at it, we see, yeah, probably the basis for organic certification is there. We have low use of chemicals as things stand. We have production based on relatively low yields, so it's unlikely that there will be a negative impact on yields. On the other hand, there is a big difficulty in organizing smallholders, training smallholders, developing groups, developing record keeping, and ensuring that we have organized systems. It's an unregulated chain, and this is also going to make it more difficult. So in some countries we have quite a regulated chain. Cote d'Ivoire is one. In others, we have either an unregulated chain or an ineffective regulation. And that makes the verification, establishment, development of the necessary organization all the more difficult. On the other hand, organic farming offers farmers a premium. It can therefore make West African processors more competitive by creating distinct supply chains, traceable supply chains, for which, as we've seen, consumers are prepared to pay. It definitely, and I know this from personal experience, development of organic production and processing definitely lends itself to closer grower relationships which support greater competitiveness of processors. And there is, probably in the organic sector more than any other sector or segment of the market, there is technical support available. Buyers tend to be much more supportive. They tend to be much more likely to invest in the supply chain than in conventional. And that is simply a function of the fact that, not to put it too bluntly, there is a shortage of organic cashews around the world. As we see, basics in place in most African countries. I believe organic production can make some processors competitive, but I'm equally certain that it's not for everyone. If we look at our conclusions, it is an option. It is an option that promises growth. It's not an easy option. So ideas of let's go organic to get a 25% price premium, this is not really a genuine option. This is not something that's likely to work. If, on the other hand, you take the view, let's build our supply chain, let's put organic certification in place, let's put a lot of work and probably quite a bit of money too into play, I think it can work. But there is a problem. And this problem has been emerging for the last few years. You know, anywhere there's a premium, anywhere there's additional money available, you're quite likely to get people trying to take advantage of that. So we are seeing situations where there is an element of what I can only describe as fraud, and where people are shipping kernels that are not properly organic certified. Maybe they've just been tested for pesticides or pesticide residues, but they're being shipped and labeled as organic. And that is likely to put the entire sector in jeopardy. If that was discovered to be happening in Europe, in the US, in China, in India, in Japan, any of those markets, there would be major problems. So, in conclusion, real opportunity in the organic sector, growing quickly, lots of new products, lots of new customers. It needs time and it needs investment and it needs careful governance. That's the organic cashew sector. Now let's see if our guests are around. Give me one moment. I think I see Karen. Yeah. Come on now, where our attendees see you. Let's.
Starting already.
So we're about 1 hour into a discussion about organic cashews.
Yeah.
We've been talking about West African opportunity in organic cashews, and we've been talking about the organic general. So we need to share this. So I'm really pleased to welcome Cara Hillenbrand from SAP to join us today. She has the distinction of being the first ever real technical person to join us on the GME. And Cara, it's great to have you here. You're very welcome. You've been working with Cashew Coast in Cote d'Ivoire, and you have been really active and really successful, I understand, in the traceability program. Can you tell us a little bit about how that works, what it does, and maybe what it means?
Yeah, well, so our collaboration with Cashew Coast started in last year summer, and we've basically implemented a cloud-based software solution in the Ivory Coast, and our software solution is a three-part solution. So it consists of a mobile app, which is usually used by the field agents in the field capturing data. Second part is a web interface used by administrators, and third part is a analytics cloud platform where business analytics happens and all the data can be displayed.
So where did this come from? How did you get involved with Cashew Coast? How did the project evolve?
To be honest, I was not involved in the initial stages. I think the sales department.
The sales department. I love the sales department.
So maybe my role, I'm working in customer success for the product SAP Rural Sourcing Management. So yeah, whenever a new customer gets onboarded, I'm getting involved. I'm the first point of contact with the customer.
So you're making it happen, really. Making sure.
Like from kickoff to go live, basically.
What other projects have you got working in agriculture in West Africa? Is this the first or other others?
No, we have other projects also with different products, like palm oil, coffee, and now also a project that is treating dried chilies and paprika. And yeah, Uganda, Zimbabwe, Ghana, we're working in.
What do you think this means for farmers?
I think our solution can have a really big impact on inclusive supply chains. So yeah, facilitating market access to farmers. We can, through the app, we can provide financial proof of sales or ownership of land, these kind of things. We can also really have a big impact on price transparency, because farmers actually get a text message, for example, or similar about the price they're being paid, etc. So yeah, these are only a few examples.
It could be really significant in the way that cashew business is done. We've been listening to a lot of buyers of organic cashews over the last couple of days. Keep asking us about two things really: the traceability aspect and to verify that chain, which is really important, especially in organic, but also about the story behind the product. And I asked the food safety expert last night, what was that new? What was hot in food technologist rather? What was hot? We said, you know, we've done nearly everything we can do in terms of technology, food. What's hot now is the story.
Yeah.
And this is what I see as what you're doing, that it's really significant in how it allows that story to be told, but not only told, to be verified.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
How did you find working with Cashew Coast? This is, I guess, the first Cashew project.
Yeah, it is, yeah.
It's the first project with a processor, therefore.
Yeah.
How is that relationship developed?
Yeah, our specific system configuration for Cashew Coast is indeed a little bit special. We have basically we're tracing the produce, the Cashew Coast, from the farmer where it's been grown or picked to the processing plant through various steps. So it passes satellite warehouses, central warehouses, and then the processing plant in the end. And yeah, many processing steps. So the produce gets separated very often, then it gets consolidated again. So this also brings in a lot of complexity in traceability.
Yeah.
But we managed, so that's I think a big success. And yeah.
Yeah, I think anyone who's bought raw cashew nuts or been in the cashew business understands the complexity of it and how difficult it can be to assemble, but probably also how important it is.
Yeah.
I think one of the things that these systems do is that they make this kind of traceability and identification open to all businesses, whereas in the past, this would have been information that was held very close, and few buyers would have it, most buyers would not. And it was often the secret to running the RCM track. So I think what you're doing with Cashew Coast and somebody in time with others will broaden that out and give an ownership to the supply chain that's much broader than it has been traditionally. And that's a huge thing. It could also have a positive impact on pricing eventually again for farms, and that undoubtedly in the longer run. And we could see, well, I'd like to see a situation where your product or something like it is everywhere.
Yeah. Me too, definitely.
For more reasons than just making money out of it.
No, really. I think our team especially is very convinced about the product itself, and we would like to bring it out to a lot more
So the plan is
out
to
there.
roll this out, other processors, other countries.
Yeah, basically, yeah. I mean, anywhere where smallholder sourcing is basically happening, where businesses source from thousands of farmers, our solution is applicable.
What's the hardware involved? Is it phone-based from the farmer's point of view?
Yes, so we have mobile smartphones basically in the field. So in Cashew Coast's case, I think they're called internal controllers. They're basically capturing the data about the farmer, registering the farmers, mapping the fields of the farmer. So they're walking around the field and capturing the shape. This is often required from certifying organizations like Rainforest Alliance, etc. So we are able to provide those polygons that are needed to pass the audit. And
so it's opening up then opportunities for all different kinds of certification too, because you can identify, you can verify.
Yeah.
So rainforest is an interesting one, obviously organic, but also it could have fair trade and some of the verifiable records. I was discussing earlier one of the key aspects of organic production is better and more record keeping.
Yeah.
So your product is very nicely.
Yeah. I mean, it's incredible to see what these certifiers require very often from the businesses. No, and I mean, I think back in the days, you know, these huge Excel paper-based, documents where you list every farmer, and for us, it's kind of easy to.
I've been there. We once did a project in Cambodia with 5,000 farmers. The entire record keeping was paper-based.
Yeah.
Okay, Cara, stay with us for the time being. We're going to have a conversation with Salma when she becomes available. But in the meantime, let me go back to Blessing. Blessing, do we have any questions?
Thank you very much, Jim. No, we do not have any questions yet, so you may continue with your interaction.
Okay, everyone's quiet smoothly and switch over on that. Okay, let me then ask you one or two things. So is this, for the application of this system, what would be the basic things that a process you need to have in place to start talking to you about developing such a system?
Yeah. Not a lot. At some point, of course, we need devices, mobile phones,
Yeah.
that customer needs to take care of. Otherwise, for the web interface, it's just accessible through a browser. Also, the analytics platform through a browser. So
Okay.
there's a few internet connection. But also the mobile application is offline enabled. So in the field, when data capture is actually happening, in the rural areas, there might not be internet. So that's completely fine. Whenever there is an internet connection, the data gets synced to all platforms.
So
and
it
it's
kind of
available
syncs,
there.
if that's the right word.
Yeah.
So if there's, you don't necessarily need a continuous data connection
No,
to make it work. Okay, that's
Completely offline enabled.
so I guess the processor would then have had to identify the farmers that they want to work with and make sure that those farmers had at some point, ideally during the day, have a good data connection and the availability of the handsets.
Yeah.
The handsets are not a problem, especially nowadays.
Yeah. I mean, I guess I think the Cashew Coast users actually maybe go to a satellite warehouse or like maybe a physical structure where there is internet, and then at the end of the day they just sync the data. So that's
So it fits very well. We've been talking on this webinar over the last 2 or 3 months. We've been talking about processors developing their supply chains, and so many processors tend to buy from local traders. They don't actually ever know who the farmers that grow the product are. So I suppose a processor must have the ambition to have a fully linked, integrated supply chain to make sense.
yeah.
Number one. But other than that, it's fairly basic stuff, isn't it? I mean, we're not talking about expensive hardware here. Otherwise, it's not going to work.
Yeah.
I know cashew people; they're not going to invest in hardware.
Yeah, I don't know. It's also, I don't know if the interface of the application has been shown already. Probably not, but it's super simple. Maybe I can have you on the phone here with the application.
Yeah, that'd be really interesting. So we're going to have a look at a little bit about how this works. Cara will give us a quick demonstration. I hope you're not getting too much background noise. We're had a rather busy day here at BioFact today. There's quite a lot of people around. We've seen a good few cashew people around, which is encouraging.
Maybe I'm just showing a little bit the interface. Is it? I think it's light.
It's not great for us.
Like this. Well, at least it's visible that there are these icons that are really simple. Maybe I can. Maybe a little bit, maybe.
So it's basically icons.
Yeah.
Select.
You click on farmer registration, create a new farmer, and then, for example, you can see you can take a photo of the farmer, upload the ID of the farmer, indicate all kinds of socioeconomic data, phone number, etc., household size, and then the farmer is registered basically. And farm mapping, service, buying, payment, loading, etc. So there are all kinds of different features that are, of course, enabled for different users. So usually different users have different permissions.
It looks remarkably simple to use.
That's the idea. So
Well, yeah,
that's what our customers always say. Also, it needs to be very simple.
Sometimes,
needs to be simple.
certainly people of my generation are a little bit frightened of technology.
Yeah.
And then when we see how it works, we're pleasantly surprised. How would a processor find out more about this? Can we circulate maybe contacts or something like that?
Yeah. So I mean, first of all, the solution is called SAP Rural Sourcing Management. So if you type that into Google, you'll find a website. But I think you can also contact me, and then I will forward maybe the requests.
Okay, so maybe leave me a business card, and I will forward that to Blessing at the African Cash Alliance, and then anyone on the webinar can access. It's called SAP Sourcing Management.
Rural Sourcing Management.
Rural Sourcing Management. SAP Rural Sourcing Management. Well worth investigating, I think. this and products like it could change the whole supply chain. Cara, it's been really generous of you to come over this morning and spend your time with us. Thanks very much indeed. I'm looking forward to hearing more about this. And don't forget to leave us your contact details so we can get them to Blessing and get that around. Anything else you want to say on this product?
I'm just thanking for the opportunity to speak here. I mean, I don't really see anyone, so I don't know who's attending, but yeah, have a look at it if you're interested. It's a great product.
So we have Zoom meeting this morning. This is also on Facebook Live. It's on YouTube, and a lot of people attend, and then a lot of people catch up
Later on,
later in the week. Harith, thanks very much indeed. It's been a real pleasure to talk to you this morning. So we're hoping Salma is going to join us for a conversation around about the organic cashew chain. In the meantime, I think that we should maybe think a little bit about some of these issues on the supply chain and how the development of the supply chain has become such a major issue for success in processing. I think it's really important that as processors looking to the future, that we appreciate that integration of our supply chain is become a key demand of buyers. And people are asking, well, how is it that West African cashew kernels are making premium prices at the moment? One of the key reasons is that there is a verifiable, potentially, I say potentially because not everyone has these systems yet, potentially traceable supply chain. So this makes huge difference to buyers. And when we talk about the story of the product, we talk about it on different levels. We talk about it in terms of technically on the supply chain, but we also talk about it in terms of consumer preferences. So from a marketing and a technical point of view, this is a really essential aspect of moving our sector forward. Cara, I won't take any more of your time. Thanks a million. Hope to see you again. Take care. A blessing. It looks like Salma is going to be a little bit late joining us. So if you have any questions, we'd love to hear them.
Thank you very much, Jim. We still don't have any questions in yet. Jim, can you hear me?
Hi, Blessing. I'm not hearing you. I'm sorry. I don't know if you're.
Jim, can you hear me now?
Give me some information.
Is it better now? Can you hear me?
See if I can fix it at my end.
Hello, Jim. Can you hear me now?
Blessing?
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me, Jim?
Hi, Blessing. I can hear you now. Sorry, I didn't hear you.
Can you hear me? Is it better now, Jim? Can you hear me? Hello, Jim. Jim, can you hear me?
Listen, I don't know if there's something we could do about your volume. I'm having difficulty hearing you.
I can hear you loud and clear, but can you hear me?
Okay, let me just bear with me one moment. I'll see if I can change.
Okay.
Okay, I think Salma is going to join us, and we'll have a quick chat about the organic cashew sector. So I'm here sitting on the Cashew Coast. We'll have a 5-minute conversation. Okay, look, I think what we're going to do, we've obviously got a delay with Salma. She's talking to so many customers today. Let's end today's session. I would like to thank everyone who's attended. I'd like to thank Cara particularly, but also Cashew Coast for hosting me here at their stand at BioFac in Nuremberg. Thanks to African Cashew Alliance, to our interpreters, and most of all, thanks to everyone who's attended. I'm looking forward to talking to you again in 2 weeks, and then we're going to talk about exactly what's going on with cashew demand, particularly in Europe and the US. So thank you very much indeed. Until then, all the best and stay in touch. Bye bye.
Thank you very much, Jim, and for hosting the session from BioFac, and to our participants. We truly apologize for any inconvenience, and we'll have a recap of this particular session at the next Global Market Encounter, which is in 2 weeks. So please join us next 2 weeks to have a recap of today's session. We sincerely apologize for any inconvenience caused. The session will still be available on YouTube. If you would want to revisit it, it will be available on YouTube, African Cashew Alliance, and you can visit and take the session again. On behalf of the African Cashew Alliance, we thank our partners and sponsors for making this conference, for making this session a success, looking at SNI, GIZ Move, CNFA Pro Cashew, Maya, Intersnack, and many others. Please be informed that the African Cashew Alliance 16th Annual Cashew Conference will be held in Abuja, Nigeria, from the 12th to the 15th of September, and registrations has started. To access early bird rate, which is currently ongoing, valid to the 30th of August, click on www.acalivevents.com and register and have amazing discounts. We hope to host you in Abuja come 12th to the 15th of September 2022. Until then, do stay safe. Bye-bye.
L'Alliance pour le cajou africain, ACA, vous présente la 16e conférence et exposition annuelle sur le cajou. L'édition de cette année se tiendra du 12 au 15 septembre à Sheraton Abuja Hotel, situé à Abuja, au Nigeria. Sous le thème « Renforcer le marketing durable des amandes et des produits dérivés dans l'industrie africaine de la noix de cajou », rejoignez les acteurs de l'industrie du cajou et les partenaires de développement du monde entier, soit en présentiel ou virtuellement, pour assister à des séances plénières, des présentations et des débats d'experts du cajou du monde entier.
The African Cashew Alliance ACA presents to you